this is just a wee interview with Jean of Mount Stuart House. We're just going to talk a bit about the history of the estate, about the history of the house. Nothing too in depth, but I'll take it over to you now, Jean.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this family are Stuarts, and they're descended of the Scottish Kings of Scotland.
Of course, yes.
Robert the Bruce, and Mary Queen of Scots, and the King Jameses. And the family have lived in the island for hundreds of years, and they lived in the castle in town. So they lived in Rothesay Castle, and it was plundered by the Campbells in 1685. And the family then moved into a small mansion house in town, and it was quite a small building, and one of the sons, who became the second Earl of Bute, married a Campbell, and that was the clan who destroyed their castle. And she didn't like living in the small house. It was quite small and didn't have much of a garden, and she was very keen in botany, and that's when they decided to build Mount Stuart, and they built out on this estate. And they built the first house, started in 1716, into 1718 the family moved into the building, and it was a beautiful Georgian house which was right in this position. And for generations of the clan Stuart lived in that house until it was sadly burnt down by accident in December of 1877, and that's when this magnificent neo-Gothic Mount Stuart was rebuilt by the family. So 3 years in the planning, and by 1880 they had put the first stone into the ground and started building. It took about 20 years to build the main body of Mount Stuart. We have an incredible collection of art here at Mount Stuart, probably one of the finest private collections in Great Britain. And in the dining room itself there are portraits by Alan Ramsay, by Sir Joshua Reynolds, by Gainsborough, Duprat, Bottoni, and my particular favourite is the Rayburn of the second Marquess and the founders of the fortunes of Mount Stuart. But that's just a very small part of an incredible collection around the building, but they do tell the family's history.
I think that is important to mention as well, is that not only is this quite significant to Scottish history with the fact that we're in, obviously you mentioned the Stuart family is synonymous with Scottish kings, and also the first kings of England, the Scottish kings of England, but also the other British history there as well, with Wales, East Sussex I think was mentioned. So there's quite, for a tourist coming from outside of Scotland, it's quite a little piece of history for themselves rather than just coming to Scotland. So it's quite...
We do have a lot of people coming from Wales, and they've maybe been to Cardiff Castle or Castell and coming to Mount Stuart, which Mark was built as his family home, and of course money from the Industrial Revolution, and people come here and they get the connection with South Wales particularly, but as you say also East Sussex, the family are given land through marriages, and there's many connections with the lands, but also with different aristocratic families all over the country, and the marriages and the blends. So it's interesting for everyone who comes, because they usually go out thinking, wow, I didn't realise that, and they're learning something, and I can honestly see people go away impressed by not just the building but by its history.
So how far can the line then go back from?
Hundreds of years. I mean, this family are direct descendants of Queen Margaret of Scotland.
Was she the one who fell off her horse?
She was Robert
the Bruce's daughter.
Yes.
Seen her re-rock in Paisley.
So that's roughly where the history starts then?
Yes. You can go back as far as that. And then of course...
So that's what, middle 1200s, isn't it?
A bit later there,
Well, she was born in the 11th century. Margaret was born in the 11th century, and then of course it was later Margaret from Queen Margaret of Scotland. It goes on, she marries of course Malcolm, King Malcolm IV of Scotland, and then when he was killed in battle, eventually through time it leads on to his nephew becoming king, who was Robert the Bruce, and Robert the Bruce's daughter then married Walter the highest Stuart of Scotland, who's this family, and their union gave the first of the Stuart kings, Robert II, and Robert II went on to have, I think it was approximately 21 children, and this family are descendants of that lineage.
Yes. No, it's really good because
that to me is also quite interesting, because it goes really quite far back to quite significant.
Well, Robert Bruce is the one of Scotland's favourite kings, and obviously his daughter. Not much is actually known about Margaret, but she, if you're interested, you can see the wee memorial in Paisley, which is dedicated to where she was thrown from her horse, very young. But I think that's about it for the interview. But it was very interesting. We've had a fantastic time, and we'd recommend you come along and visit the estate. So there you go. Thanks very much, Jean.
It's a great pleasure.